And rising from there, he goes into the region of Judea beyond the Jordan. And again, crowds gather around him, and as was his custom, again he was teaching them. And Pharisees approached him and asked him if it were legal for a husband to dismiss his wife, testing him. He answered and said to them, "What did Moses command you?" They said Moses allowed him to write a certificate of divorce and dismiss her. Jesus said to them, "Because of your hardened hearts, he wrote this command for you. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be yoked to his wife, and the two will become one. So they're no longer two, but one flesh. So what God has yoked together, no human is to separate." And in the house again, his disciples were asking him about this, and he says to them, "Whoever dismisses his wife to marry another commits adultery against her. And if the woman, having dismissed her husband, marries another, she commits adultery." And people were bringing to him little children so that he might bless them. But the disciples rebuked them. When Jesus saw this, he got angry and he said to them, "Let the children come to me. Don't stop them. Because the empire that God brings belongs to such as these. I tell you, this is the way it is. Whoever doesn't receive the empire that God brings like a little child definitely won't enter it." Taking them in his arms and laying his hands on them, he was blessing them all. Now, as Jesus was setting out on his way, a man came and fell down before him and said, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. Do not kill. Do not steal. Do not commit adultery. Do not bear false witness. Do not defraud. Honor your father and mother." And he said, "Well, all these I've kept from my youth." Jesus looked at him intently, loved him, and said, "Well then, you lack only one thing. Go sell everything you have and give it to these poor, and you will have great treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me." And his face fell. And he went away sad because he had a lot of property. And Jesus said, "How hard it is for those with property to enter into the empire that God brings." The disciples were astounded. And he said to them again, "Children, how hard it is to enter into the empire of God. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a person with possessions to enter into the empire that God brings." The disciples were astounded and said, "Well, then who could be saved?" Jesus said, "For humans it's impossible, but not for God. All things are possible for God." And Rock came to him and said, "Well, teacher, we left everything and followed you." Jesus said to them, "I tell you, this is the way it is. There is no one who has left a house or brothers or sisters or a mother or fathers or children or fields who won't receive in this age 100 times as many now, houses and brothers and sisters and mothers and children and fields with oppression, and in the age to come, everlasting life. Many who are first will be last, and the last, they'll be first." And they were again heading to Jerusalem, and Jesus was ahead of them. And those behind were dazed and confused. And Jesus said, "We're going to Jerusalem, and the human one will be handed over to the high priest, the legal experts, and the elders. And they will condemn him to death and hand him over to the Gentiles. And they will spit on him and publicly torture him and put him to death. And 3 days after being put to death, he will rise. And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, said to him, "Oh, teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask you." And Jesus said, "What do you want me to do for you?" And they said, "We want to sit, one at your right and one at your left when you come in glory." And Jesus said, "You don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I'm about to drink, or to be baptized by the baptism with which I'm about to be baptized?" And they said, "Yeah, we're able." And Jesus said, "The baptism with which I'm about to be baptized, with that you will be baptized. And the cup that I'm about to drink, you will drink. But to sit at my right and my left, that's not mine to give, but it's for those for whom it has been prepared." Now when the other 10 heard, they got angry with James and John. And summoning them, Jesus said, "You know how it is with the Gentile leaders. Their great ones are tyrants over them, and their important ones dominate them. But it's not so among you. Whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be the most important of all must be the servant of all. Because even the human one came not to be served, but to serve and to live his life as a ransom for many." And they went into Jericho. And as they were coming out of Jericho with the crowds, the son of Timaeus, Bartimaeus, a man who was blind and who was begging, was seated beside the road. And hearing that it was Jesus, he screamed out, saying, "Jesus, Son of David, show me mercy." And those who were around him rebuked him. But he shouted even louder, "Son of David, show me mercy." And Jesus, stopping, said, "Summon him." So they summoned him and said, "Rise, get up, he's calling for you." And rising up, he threw off his cloak and he came to Jesus. Jesus said, "What would you like me to do for you?" And he said, "Rabboni, for me to see." And Jesus said, "Your courageous trust has saved you. Your sight is restored." And his eyes were opened and he saw everything clearly. And he began following Jesus on the way.